Today is our second to last lesson, if I remember correctly. So we only have about two more actual lessons, and we're going to have like about 3 or 4 more sessions where you get to actually workshop your work. But we are getting really close to the end of the current series of Conchas y Café workshops. For those of you that have, just kind of been working here and there on getting your work done, I do recommend that you try and upload your work as soon as you can to Google Classroom, so that way we can begin giving you more of that directed feedback. I know that Abraham did get a chance this week to, provide some feedback through Google Classroom, and I'm going to be able to do so really soon as well. So just, make sure that you're taking advantage of the time. In a way that will help you with your short stories, your sonnets, and all the other poems that you will be working on. So, and today's lesson, again, like I said before, is going to be led by Abraham. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic on to Abraham Jaramillo.
Hi, people. And for those of you who are in YouTube, just quick reminder, this next Saturday, I don't know if Luis, do you have the flyer for Nikolai? I want to announce this class.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for reminding.
Yeah.
Towards the end, I'll show it and make sure that you guys are all aware of what's happening. But this Saturday is another workshop that we're going to be providing through our Community Bridges series. And it's going to be led by none other than Nikolai Garcia, our teaching artist intern of the month. So, check that out. It's going to be at Patria Coffee in Compton on Saturday, this upcoming Saturday at 1 p.m. So, and also we have Tina and David Fallon. For those of you in the Inland Empire area, they're going to be...
Can I say something?
In a moment, Elena. Let me finish what I was saying.
Okay.
But Tina and David Fallon are both going to be representing over at the Barnes & Noble in Montclair. We'll give Tina a chance to talk about that a little bit more, or David, whichever you choose. But yeah, we'll save those announcements more towards the end with the greater details.
Thank you, Luis. And I know I put you on the spot there, but we need to promote these people.
Yes.
Crazy people with cool people. So today's quote, let's start going for this. Might as well. So everybody can see, right? Or should I try to make it bigger? I'm going to take the silence as yes.
Yeah, it looks pretty good to me.
So the quote goes like this. I want you to act as if the house is on fire, because it is. And this quote comes from Greta Thunberg. She was born January 3rd, 2003. Her full name is Greta Tintin Eleanor Hernan Thunberg. It's a long name. She's a Swedish environmental activist working to address the problem of climate change. Founder of the first of the Fridays for the Future movement, also called School Strikes for Climate. Y en español, esta cita dice, quiero que actúen como si la casa estuviera en llamas, porque lo está. Esta cita viene de Greta Thunberg, nacida el 3 de enero de 2003. Greta Tintin Eleanor Hernan Thunberg. Ese es su nombre entero. Es activista medioambiental sueca que trabaja para abordar el problema del cambio climático. Fundadora del movimiento conocido como Fridays for Future, también llamado Huelga Escolar por el Clima. So, con esto, ¿qué piensan de ustedes esta cita? What do you guys think about this quote?
Well, it grabs your attention.
Thank you. We have Catherine, sorry. I saw the hands up too late.
It gets me going. The house is on fire. It's a great metaphor or image to really spark that call to action.
Yes, definitely. And Gustavo, I think your mic is off, Gustavo. I think you're asking.
I'm sorry. You called me, right?
Your hands is up on the chats. That's why.
Yeah. Anyway, my apologies. And I was just gonna say it's true. It's true. The house is on fire. The world is at screaming its last scream, dying scream, and we got to save it. I think so.
Thanks. Anybody else?
In the chat,
Anything to say about
Mojde-
this?
Yeah, in the chat, Mojde wrote, "I want you to act now, as if we are all on fire." Kind of like
Yeah.
a reinterpretation of the
Mhm.
of the quote. If we don't care about the house, then I'm assuming we're gonna be burned alive with it.
Yeah. We have Mauricio as well.
I think it's calling to action, not just to obviously to act immediately about climate change, but also to see the climate as a place where you live. I feel like a lot of people may think that it's a problem maybe for a different generation, or maybe even somewhere in a different country that doesn't affect them. But I think with this quote, it kind of brings it home and lets the world know that no, this affects everybody.
Definitely. Anybody else has anything to say for this one? Thanks, Mauricio. Annie says it reminds me of the saying, "Live like you are dying because we are." True, probably. That's probably the inspiration for it. Well, I definitely chose this one because I think a lot of people think of climate change and they don't really seem to grasp its enormity because it's a huge problem. It's a global problem, and it's really scientific, and it's not easy to see. It's not easy to spot because we're thinking more of weather than climate change most of the time. And so this is the cool thing when you replace things to give meaning or to give a different understanding of perspective into another concept. So I like the fact that she's talking about global warming, but she decided to change it to a house. Because like many of you were saying, if you're thinking of a house, let's say you're in the living room, and you see there's a fire in the kitchen, you're gonna be like, oh, let's talk about it. Let's find solutions. You're gonna get the French out of there, or you at least gonna get some water and try to turn it off, right? Because the problem is there. You see it, you can feel it, probably. You can start smelling like bacon or something. So you're gonna do stuff. You're gonna try to turn it off, and that's what I like about this concept, like changing something so difficultly hard to grasp in your mind to something so easy as a house on fire. So that's why I really like this one. So without further ado, we're gonna move into this poem. Oh, hold on, Veronica, you have something to say?
I was just gonna maybe provide a comment. I think it's also important to talk about the context of where she was saying it. This is a quote she said at the World Forum, right? And it's important because she was actually addressing world leaders. And I personally have a problem with the idea of some people don't act, because there are some people that are, in my opinion, particularly responsible for creating much of the destruction in our world. Like, is that something that, una persona cotidiana can say, like, oh, I don't want to, pump gas, or I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. There are some options that are not real options, especially for BIPOC people. And I think it's really important that we place this quote in particular within the proper context. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like, but in reality, like Mochte was saying, we are all on fire, that regardless of who's in charge or who might be a little more to blame for. I think we all have to take our own responsibility into it. We all use computers, we also use electricity, we use all the stuff that the nature has provided. And I have seen so many of us trashing or doing all this stuff that's not supposed to do. So we definitely are to blame, all of us. And the fact that she's trying to address this as a more like a governmental level, it's something that I think is going to take longer than we do it ourselves. So I think it has to do winning ourselves and also like trying to do it in the bigger scale as she's trying to do with government and laws, right?
Right.
And so
I think we all hold accountability for trying to respond to the crisis. I don't think that we're all in the same way responsible for where we're at. There are literally laws that ban us from collecting waters. There are laws that ban us from creating local farms. Like if there are ways in Africa, the Host Project that is trying to figure out how they reforest there, or combat the deforestation and the desertification that is happening over there. But if there's laws that are preventing you from doing it, then how do I challenge a government with these types of powers? So I'm not saying I don't want to act. I'm saying that we have to be honest about what we can do about it on an individual scale outside of direct action and on the streets kind of militant organizing. Because this is not about recycling. This is not about water bottle recycling.
Well, recycling was actually made by the people who were making the plastics. That's another story. But yeah, you're right. I mean, again, it has to be with many levels. But I think we have to, like you were saying, try to understand them at the beginning and then start moving towards a solution. It's either like if the solution comes from just us or moving the solution in the government or the bigger picture, right? And we have Louise Jackson. Please,
Well, it's
sorry.
okay. My question was answered.
Perfect. We have solutions today. And so, thank you, Veronica. That's pretty insightful. And we're gonna move on. Hold on. I think Mauricio posted something. Hold on. Also, a lot of money and marketing has been put into feeding the message. And then failure is on the individual consumer and not the companies. Yeah, that's definitely a big. It's a complex problem. That's what I like about this quote. It makes something so complex so easy to see, like a house is on fire. That's what I really like about this. And so we're gonna move on to today's poem. It's Sonnet 97. How like a winter hath my absence been, by nothing other than William Shakespeare. So I need somebody to read in English and then somebody to read in Spanish. And if you need help with like half of the poem, just ask somebody to help you out. Okay, let's see who's up for it.
I guess I will. Okay, Sonnet 97. How like a winter hath my absence been. How like a winter hath my absence been from thee, the pleasure of the fleeting year. What freezes have I felt, what dark days seen, what old December's bareness everywhere. And yet this time removed was summer's time, the teeming autumn, big with rich increase, bearing the wanton burthen of the prime, like widowed wombs after their lord's decease. Yet this abundant issue seemed to me but hope of orphans and unfathered fruit. For summer and his pleasures wait on thee, and thou away. The very birds are mute, or if they sing, 'tis with so dull a cheer that leaves look pale, dreading the winter's near.
Good work, Tina. I love it.
Good job,
And
Tina.
before we start talking about the poem, who wants to give it a go in Spanish? Ready when you are, Luz.
Soneto 97. Como un invierno ha sido mi ausencia. Como un invierno ha sido mi ausencia de ti, el placer del año fugaz. Qué heladas he sentido, qué días oscuros he visto. Qué vieja desnudez de diciembre por todas partes. Aún este tiempo perdido fue tiempo veranal. El otoño rebosante, grande de ricos aumentos, llevando la carga desfrenada de la prima. como vientres de viudas después de la muerte de sus señores. Sin embargo, ese tema de abundancia me pareció nada más que esperanza de huérfanos y frutos bastardos, ya que el verano y sus placeres te esperan y tú lejos, los mismos pájaros están mudos. O si cantan, es con una alegría tan aburrida que las hojas parecen pálidas, temiendo el llegar del invierno.
Thank you. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So, what do you guys think about this piece of work by the William Shakespeare? ¿Qué piensan del trabajo de William Shakespeare? Catherine?
It's all Greek to me, but I when I was looking at it as a handout, part of the homework today, I didn't realize that it was really the it wasn't the ABB whatever the other sonic that I was used to seeing. So I didn't read it as a sonic, but now that it was being read, it was more clear to me. So it's okay. What can I say? Because I'm just now getting the, how do you say, the gist of it.
Gist of it, right?
The
Yeah.
gist of it. Okay, the gist of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
I
a
was used to- I was
Shakespearean
used to the
sonnet,
others.
Miss Lois.
Say, pardon?
This is a Shakespearean sonnet, but yeah, that's a good observation that it didn't follow the traditional Petrarchan sonnet.
Yeah. So it kind of threw me for a loop.
But yeah, thank
Yeah,
you for
like-
sharing that.
But it's
Yeah,
you know what? I really like it, you know, because it's a mystery. And I think Shakespeare's writings, because even in high school, you know, it's a mystery. You really have to, how do you say, put yourself in it and in that zone of his style of writing. So where it says, like a winter, what is that? Hath my absence been? You know, so that is winter. Yeah. So I was
Yes.
thinking about, and I did some of the homework that you assigned from for this week for tonight, and I was more or less thinking about how we're not yet into the summer month, but yet the heat is upon us. You know,
Mhm.
and so that kind of like took me there. You know, I'm just now seeing it, but yeah. So I mean, you really have to get into it, and
Right. Analyze it, right? Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I love the fact that you noticed there was a different type of sonnet, and because that goes back to the previous class, and Luis actually, when he was doing the class, he pointed out there were different styles of sonnets,
Mhm.
but you can see some similarities. It does definitely carries a structure, you know.
Mhm.
And I mean, Shakespeare,
Yeah.
he's pretty good. And I think Catherine had her hand raised as well, but I don't know anymore.
Yeah, no, thank
So
you.
go for it.
I just wanted to add what I really liked was that he used nature and the seasons talking about a relationship. And therefore, we're not just talking about nature and the environment, we're now associating it with a relationship to a person and connecting that relationship we have with nature with what we have with someone else. In this case, it looks like someone he misses very much. And wondering, you know, how he will get through this season without this person. I found great beauty in that.
Yeah, and nice that you mentioned it because it definitely carries the same feeling as the first quote that we read about a house and then fire, right? A house on fire, and then talking about climate. Two different things, but it's still this relationship between these things. As long as you find those relationships, right?
Precisely.
Anybody else have anything to say about this one?
Well, I think it's also important to ask, did everyone generally get the message of the poem? Because obviously, Shakespeare was writing during the period of what's called Middle English. So there are certain words that are either slightly different or spelled differently. So I want to make sure that all of you were able to more or less understand the message of the poem.
Are you asking for a yes or a no?
Well, a little bit of both.
I'm as you speak and as it was being read,
Mhm.
it's how do you say one picture's worth 1,000 words. So as I hear it, it's coming clearer than me just reading it for myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
That's good to know. And I saw Ani also unmuted herself. Ani?
I'm sorry. I should have just raised my hand. I understood it as a poem of longing and about separation from someone that you love, but using nature and seasons as a metaphor. So I hope that I understood that correctly. I
Yeah.
didn't hear it. I didn't hear the climate change thing in there, but nature was definitely a very predominant motif or theme or a metaphor for um, the fruitfulness or lack of it um, in a relationship when there's an absence or a separation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and this one doesn't have anything on global warming or climate change. It is just we'll see when we start getting to the subject of today. But definitely, for me, it was really hard to find something on climate change. But definitely, this is a good example of today's topic. We're gonna wait on that a little bit just to see, just to check these poems. I think it has, like you were saying, it has some cool parts about it. And Moshte says it seems this poem is formatted in a way to give a cohesive and feel of sonnet more than rhythm.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's really a romantic piece because where he says, "Yet this abundant issue seems to me but hope of orphans and unfruited, unfathered fruit." So it's like if he's young, he wants a family. He has all of this fatherly substance in his body, but he can't give it out. But it says here, but hope, let me see, but for summer and his pleasures, wait on thee. So be patient. The Bible says, cast your seed not upon a rock, So, I mean, you can read a lot of stuff. I'm telling you, as I'm seeing this and as it's being read, I mean, there's some stuff you probably haven't even thought about. It's there. It's there.
Yeah. It's definitely there. And I think that, so, just to jump in a little bit here, whatever interpretation you get from this, just understand that, it's your individual interpretation. But generally speaking, both Ani and Kathy are correct in that the poem is essentially a poem that uses nature as a way of describing not just the passing of time, but also how the person that is being missed, right? The person that this poem is addressed to, they have left a big hole in the speaker's heart.
Yeah.
There's a longing that's happening.
I
As
agree.
Mojde says, it is a heavy sonnet. It's a very sad sonnet. But to kind of address the idea of there not being rhythm, there actually is a very strong rhythm here. It's just that as it was read, it wasn't read using the iambic pentameter. So if it was to be reread in the way that a sonnet is meant to be read, you will actually hear the rhythm a little bit stronger. But also keep in mind that that's partly because we speak here in an American English accent. We also are speaking American English, not Middle English, which is the English that Shakespeare would have been writing in and also speaking in. So there's some small differences in the way that it's delivered now. Um, but yes, there is rhythm there.
Definitely, yeah. It's just it's a little tricky to read the first time or the second time too. But once you get it, you start getting the rhythm of it. It definitely carries the one rhythm. And guess we're gonna I don't know, I'm gonna give you one more chance to like if anybody wants to talk about this piece before we move on to today's subject. I can ask you like what do you guys think what's your favorite line from this one at least? I would like to know that. Lewis?
I just wanted to interject that when I was living in Canada, the winters were very long. And this totally took me to those long, cold, dark winters where you're longing for anything, a ray of sunshine. So it didn't even really translate to me that he was missing someone, but just missing everything that implies any bit of joy. In addition to someone specific, but I remember feeling that way. It was just, I guess, being from California, you get immersed into a cold winter that you're not used to experiencing. It could be very, very sad times.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that's the main feeling of the poem, regardless of capturing who is it for. It definitely has that longing kind of feeling. It's either whether for summer or for someone, because that's the play of it, right? And then Mauricio mentioned, for someone and his pleasures wait on thee, and thou away. The very birds are mute. Okay.
Looks like
Then
we're getting
Michelle,
some-
very day one ton. I don't know, is that it? And sorry, this is the thing. It's better if you guys say it because in my computer, the text is really tiny. Or if seeing tits and scroll and cheers that leaves look pale, hurling the winter's near. Thank you. Yeah, cool. Good stuff. Cool stuff.
I'm kind of curious to know if everybody would like to hear it read out loud one more time.
Oh, Luis wants to play this one. I mean, go for it.
Yeah, just because it might make more of a difference if you hear it read a little bit more on the iambic pentameter. So let me give it a try. How
Hold on,
like
let me try to get.
how like a winter hath my absence been from thee, the pleasure of the fleeting year. What freezings have I felt, what dark days seen, what old December's bareness everywhere. And yet this time removed was summer's time, the teeming autumn, big with rich increase, bearing the wanton burthen of the prime, like widowed wombs after their lord's decease. Yet this abundant issue seemed to me but hope of orphans and unfathered fruit. For summer and his pleasures wait on thee, and thou away, the very birds are mute. Or if they sing, 'tis with so dull a cheer that leaves look pale, dreading the winter's near.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
No problem. I see Mauricio raised his hand.
Mauricio?
I got a sense of longing. Well, I mean, that was already mentioned, but now that I like hear it again, it doesn't even seem directed as a person, more like a time in someone's life is what I felt. You know, like not even just a season, but like youth and like maybe a different time when things were like brighter. I think that's what, to me, that's what the summer represents. Just hope and expectations and kind of gleeful, like looking at the future. And I think the winter, and he or she or they, whoever William Shakespeare is, supposedly he's rumored to be like, I don't know, a woman or several people, but William Shakespeare uses December kind of like the foil to the summer, the opposite. So it makes me think that December is kind of like an older, maybe a wiser time where maybe something is not what it used to be and it can't go back to the way it was.
Definitely has some of that, and I think he uses those feelings towards his advantage in writing this, which I think it's pretty neat. And yeah, most of these poems sometimes they do have towards the beginning something to prepare you. Like for this one, it says, "How like a winter had my absence been." So that kind of sets the premise what he's trying to talk about, right?
Mhm.
Okay, and so let's move on. Let me try to reduce this thing so I can see it. There you go.
Can I read the next one?
Well, so far we haven't started with the next one yet. We're gonna start giving the topic of the day. So wait on it, and we'll see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And so we're talking about conceit, and from the Latin term from concept, much like a builder with a hammer, writers use different tools to set the tone or mood of a piece. A conceit is one such a device. Popular in Renaissance literature, a conceit is a cross between a metaphor and a simile. Like a metaphor, a conceit makes a comparison, but the objects are very dissimilar, provoking the reader to think about something in a new way. Conceit usually demands your attention because the comparison seems so far-fetched. For example, a broken heart is like a damaged clock. The comparisons between a broken heart and a damaged clock is unconventional. But once you think about it, you can see the connection. Both a broken clock and a broken heart seem to stop, but both can be mended with time. Historically, conceits are unique because they aren't just one line or phrase, but rather a whole poem or section of a work. So that keep in mind, that's I think the main part. Just like this is because they aren't just one line or phrase, but rather a whole poem or section of a work. And before the questions, I'm gonna try and give you this in Spanish. And presunción del término latino para concepto. Al igual que un constructor con un martillo, los escritores usan diferentes herramientas para establecer el tono o el estado de ánimo de una pieza. La presunción es uno de esos dispositivos. Popular en la literatura del Renacimiento, una presunción es un cruce entre la metáfora y la simile. Con una metáfora, una presunción hace una comparación, pero los objetos son muy disimilares, así provocando que el lector piense en algo de una manera nueva. La presunción generalmente exige la atención porque la comparación parece demasiado descabellada. Por ejemplo, un corazón roto es como un reloj dañado. La comparación entre un corazón y un reloj dañado no es convencional, pero una vez pensado, se puede ver la conexión. Tanto un reloj roto como un corazón roto parecen detenerse, pero ambos pueden repararse con el tiempo. Históricamente, las presunciones son únicas porque no eran solo una línea o frase, sino un poema completo o una sección de una obra. Y como lo estaba haciendo en inglés, esta es la parte importante de las presunciones, que no solo es una línea, sino el poema completo o una sección de un poema como una stanza. Okay, and so without further ado, any questions on this new concept of conceit? Mauricio.
It's not a question, but I wanted to ask if like certain Spanish idioms or like dichos, if they kind of function the same way.
Well, it probably, but it just depends because the concept of this is to follow it. Because sometimes you can see just one connection between two objects or two topics.
Yeah.
The whole thing about presunción is que the whole concept is so you follow through the entire piece, or at least to a big chunk of it, because you have to do a lot of connections to make that basically that to have those two things, you need a lot of examples to make it strong. That's what it basically comes down to.
Right. And just to piggyback off of that, if you think of something in Spanish like perro que ladra no muerde, the dog that barks doesn't bite, that by itself is what we would call an idiom, or it could be also maybe thought of as like potentially an axiom. But idioms work in that they're usually like a single sentence that uses something as a metaphor for something else. In the case of like el perro que ladra no muerde, a person that talks a lot will never, put forth the action. That's what the metaphor is. But what makes a conceit so different is exactly what Abraham was just saying. It requires more context. It requires more building up. A proper conceit is going to use an entire poem, or at the very minimum, an entire stanza to explain the metaphor to you, so that you not only see the metaphor, but you also are carried through the metaphor throughout the entire piece. That's why we started off with William Shakespeare, because William Shakespeare, especially this last poem, it was all conceit, all of it.
All it was the same two connections, trying to make the connection between longing, or like the absence, and winter. So that's it went through the whole poem. Because at the beginning, like the quote that we talk about, it's the house on fire, connected it to global warming. It's just one line. If it kept going, it would have made a conceit. Okay. Any other questions before we move on?
Is it clear for everyone what a conceit is?
So it's a little bit, sorry, I didn't raise my hand, but it's a little bit more than a metaphor and a simile. Okay, so it's not just, because I took what Shakespeare wrote was imagery, but there has to be kind of an action behind it, maybe, with the conceit. Is it action oriented?
Action towards like, you mean action, like somebody has to take action after that, or be in action?
I think, like if you scroll up, Abraham, to show us the poem a little bit. If you look at the way that the sonnet is structured, we're repeatedly told about the passing of time through the different phases of the seasons, right? He starts us off with saying, how like a winter hath my absence been. So the simple fact that he uses the word like, he's comparing the like separation to winter, but he's doing it using a simile, because we have the word like. But aside from that, he then goes on to say, that time still has marched on. Summer has gone, summer has come and gone. The autumn has come, and it's now rich and full because of it being harvest time, right? So the conceit there is that the passing of time is shown to us as the actual seasons, but the winter ends up being the state of being of the speaker. So it's comparing longing to winter and this perpetual winter, even though the rest of the seasons are still moving forward. The year is still continuing on. So that's what makes it a conceit. It's that, the metaphor is carried over into every aspect of the poem. So it's an entire poem that is a conceit.
And that's why I like this one, because at the beginning it definitely tells you what's coming. It's basically telling winter, and then by my absence, right? That's sort of the two things. A is winter, and absence is basically B, the two things he's talking about, right? And comparing them throughout the entire poem. And that's not the difficult part, but the thing that becomes interesting in a poem when you keep on going through those things and finding new ways of explaining them, right? Touching different matters or different aspects that might not look similar, but if you think about it and you explain it the right way, you start making those connections. So that's the interesting part about this type of poetry. Before we move on to the next part, anybody has more questions on this one? So, might maybe be a little tricky or not. I don't know.
And I see that Mojde added the Wikipedia link for Conceits in the chat. This actual definition for conceit came from the Poetry Foundation, so or at least parts of it. We modified it a little bit to try and simplify
it has other stuff that can go with it, but I think this is the main aspect that I wanted to touch.
Right.
The actual concept of having two things and finding connections and expressing them through an entire poem. Because by doing that, it makes it strong connections. Because you keep on following them and finding new ones.
Yeah.
And
Another way to think of it is like what Mauricio put in the chat, which is, this is an extended metaphor. It's a metaphor that you carry through the entire poem.
Yep.
Yeah.
Basically. Okay. Without further ado, just because I don't want to end up with not enough time. So for this one, I might need some people to help me in English, and I'll do one paragraph after that in Spanish just to make sure that nobody's left out. So these are basically news from 28 February 2022. Climate change is hitting the planet faster than scientists originally thought. So who wants to give it a go, the first paragraph? And again, do the first paragraph and I'll follow in Spanish. That'll be easier.
Yeah, if you want, Abraham, how about you and I just trade off?
Sweet.
Just to save us time. So, key points from the report. Between 3.3 billion and 3.6 billion people, more than 40% of the world's population, live in places and in situations that are highly vulnerable to climate change, the report estimates. Some are already experiencing the effects of climate change, which vary by region and are driven by factors such as geography, how that region is governed, and its socioeconomic status. The report also references for the first time historical and ongoing patterns of inequity such as colonialism that contribute to many regions' vulnerability to climate change.
So in Spanish, puntos claves del informe. Entre 3.300 millones y 3.600 millones de personas, más del 40% de la población mundial viven en lugares y en situaciones que son altamente vulnerables al cambio climático. Estima el informe. Algunos ya están experimentando los efectos del cambio climático que varían según la región y están impulsados por factores como la geografía, cómo se gobierna esa región y sus estatus socioeconómicos. El informe también hace referencia por primera vez al patrón históricos y continuo de inequidad como el colonialismo, que contribuyen a la vulnerabilidad de muchas regiones al cambio climático.
Although additional finance and planning could help many communities to improve their preparations for climate change, humanity will soon hit hard limits to its ability to adapt if temperatures continue to rise, the report says. For instance, coastal communities can temporarily buffer themselves from extreme storms by restoring coral reefs, mangroves, and wetlands, but rising seas will eventually overwhelm such efforts, resulting in coastal erosion, flooding, and loss of freshwater resources.
Aunque la financiación y la planificación adicionales podrían ayudar a muchas comunidades a mejorar sus preparativos para el cambio climático, la humanidad pronto alcanzará límites estrictos en sus capacidades de adaptación si las temperaturas continúan aumentando, dice el informe. Por ejemplo, las comunidades costeras pueden protegerse temporalmente de las tormentas extremas al restaurar los arrecifes de coral, los manglares y los humedales, pero el aumento del nivel del mar eventualmente abrumarán esos esfuerzos, lo que provocará erosión costera, inundaciones y pérdida de recursos de agua dulce.
Climate change has already caused death and suffering across the world, and it will continue to do so. In addition to contributing to deaths by helping to trigger disasters such as fires and heat waves, it has affected public health in various ways. Smoke inhalation from fires has contributed to cardiovascular and respiratory problems, for instance, and increased rainfall and flooding has led to the spread of diseases such as cholera. Mental health issues tied to the trauma of living through extreme events and to loss of livelihood and culture are also on the rise.
El cambio climático ya ha causado muertes y sufrimiento en todo el mundo y seguirá haciéndolo, además de contribuir a las muertes al ayudar a desencadenar desastres como incendios y olas de calor. Ha afectado a la salud pública de varias maneras. La inhalación de humo de los incendios ha contribuido a problemas cardiovasculares y respiratorios, por ejemplo, y el aumento de las lluvias y las inundaciones ha provocado la propagación de enfermedades como el cólera. Los problemas de salud mental vinculados al trauma de vivir eventos extremos y la pérdida de medios de subsistencia y cultura también van en aumento.
If global temperatures rise by more than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, some environmental changes could become irreversible, depending on the magnitude and duration of the overshoot beyond this threshold. In forests and Arctic permafrost, zones that act as carbon dioxide reservoirs, for instance, extreme global warming could lead to the release of excess carbon emissions, which would in turn drive further warming, a self-perpetuating cycle.
Si las temperaturas globales aumentan en más de 1.5 grados centígrados por encima de los niveles preindustriales, algunos cambios ambientales podrían volverse irreversibles. Dependiendo de la magnitud y la duración del rebasamiento más allá de este umbral, en los bosques y las zonas de permafrost del Ártico que actúan como depósitos de dióxido de carbono, por ejemplo, el calentamiento global extremo podría provocar la liberación de unos excesos de emisiones de carbono, lo que a su vez impulsará a un mayor calentamiento, un ciclo que se perpetuará a sí mismo.
Sustainable economic development must include protection for biodiversity and natural ecosystems, which secure resources such as freshwater and coastlines that shield against the effects of storms, the report says. Multiple lines of evidence suggest that maintaining the resilience of biodiversity and ecosystems as the climate warms will depend on effective and equitable conservation of approximately 30% to 50% of Earth's land, freshwater, and ocean areas.
Oh, and that's the link. If you guys want to check the full article, this is just a part of it.
Yeah.
Desarrollo económico sostenible debe incluir la protección de la biodiversidad y los ecosistemas naturales que aseguran recursos como el agua dulce, las costas que protegen contra los efectos de las tormentas, dice el informe. Múltiples líneas de evidencia sugieren que mantener la resiliencia de la biodiversidad y los ecosistemas a medida que el clima se calienta dependerán de la conservación efectiva y equitatividad de aproximadamente el 30 al 50 de las áreas terrestres de agua dulce y oceánicas de la Tierra. Este artículo entero viene aquí, aquí está el link. y lo van a poder creo ver después. So let's this is basically the article that we just read, and so without further ado, we're gonna move the favorite part of the class, which is exercise. So be ready. Class exercise. Using this article as a source of inspiration, come up with A and B, two things, objects and or concepts. You are going to compare throughout a poem. Then come up with a few lines of poetry that uses your consent and share them with the class. And this is an example that I came up while reading this, which is A, the Russian Matryoshka doll, also called a nesting doll. That's my A. And my B is going to be global warming. And these are the examples that I came out with. As the Matryoshka doll, global warming appears big and mean. Then the other one is, then we open the doll and the forest burns. Then we turn the fire off and the new doll drowns with the rising of the oceans. So basically I just came out with that, like in the article, one thing happens and then climate change, if we don't treat it, it's gonna cause another thing to appear, like a Matryoshka doll, new problems are gonna appear, right? And so we're gonna do the exercise, I'm gonna tell you in Spanish, okay? Ejercicio para la clase. Usando este artículo como fuente de inspiración, piensa en A y B. Dos cosas, objeto y o concepto, que comparas al comparar a lo largo del poema. Luego escribe unas líneas de poesía que usan su presunción y compártanlo con la clase. Por ejemplo, estos son los ejemplos que yo saqué. A va a ser la muñeca rusa Matryoshka, también llamada como la muñeca anidadora. Y después el punto B va a ser calentamiento global. Y esos son los ejemplos que di. Con muñeca Matryoshka, el calentamiento global aparece malo y grande. Luego abrimos la muñeca y el bosque se quema. Apagamos el fuego y una nueva muñeca se ahoga con el levantamiento de los océanos. So, estas son nada más pequeñas ideas, todavía falta elaborar más con ellas, pero así es como que quiero que hagan ejemplos para el día de hoy, para comenzar su poema antes de irse a su casita. So, any questions for this exercise? Go for it, Catherine.
Does B have to be global warming or based on the article?
Well, the whole theme for this class is going to be global warming, and that's what I wanted to emphasize because most of us been talking about nature and all stuff, and this one's more informed because that's why I brought the article. So yeah, for this one, yes, B is going to be global warming, and just basically find A, right? No, you're good. You're good, yeah.
Unless if you want to choose one specific aspect of global warming, like, you know, the erosion of a coastline or the wildfires, something like that.
Yes, definitely. There you go. And Luis, you have a question?
Yes, I call myself getting a jump start, and I would like to read what I have, and that way you can give me some feedback, and then I can maybe get back on the appropriate track.
Sure. That might help also to give everyone else maybe a chance to
okay.
Get some inspiration.
I entitled this Placement of History. Uncertainties of life is in sight as the climate change makes heavy our flight. As unfamiliar roads being traveled without a map, the unwanted adjustment we must make, making us feel like we are in a trap. The damages made can be viewed. We see the level of pain as in a hospital delivery room. The climate change can be considered as an out of control ocean wave that will not cease to roar. The change is making progress by pushing the force of its power like a strong wind, which you can't see, but more powerful than a muscle man's strength. Can this historical reality be a tyrant as an oppressive ruler? Will it get any crueler? Came from a place of mystery leaving his signature name all over the world, able to move out of place that which once was. Has the change caused a darkness to the scientific solution of bringing about a light? The epitome of life we once held is seen in a much different light, making it more than a challenge to view, a joyful flight. The bumps of the turbulence cause much concern, an existence that refused to move aside, a factor with a name that history has in its claim. Where are the arms in which I can grab and hold so there be means of control? Here I am on the West Coast holding holding nothing to be very boastful about, not even yet summer, and yet the temperature making a waterfall over my eyes.
Thank you, Luis.
Okay.
I think my notes on this one will be like I saw a couple of different things you were comparing, and that's good in a different what's another type of poem. But for this one, we're trying to have the same connection between two things, A and B. And this one you have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, kind of a couple of different ones. Which is, I mean, again, it's fine, but that's one of the reasons I wanted to introduce this concept, because as poets, I've seen a lot of poetry that has a lot of examples and A and B, and then starts moving to different ones. But that also loses track of what you want to talk about. And this way, you are able to focus on the same things and elaborate and make it more strong. So that's the reason you have to probably go back into your poem and check what are you A, which you want to compare A with B, and try to keep it throughout the entire poem, okay?
Okay, so I want to focus on the global change. That's going to be my A. And then what should I be for a B?
That's your homework.
Well, if I would offer a suggestion, there were at least 2 times where I heard references to flight, and like flying, the act of flying and flights, like on an airplane or something like that. So if you were to compare climate change to flying, those are 2 very different things, but it is possible to create a conceit with flight, the act of flying and everything that revolves around the idea or the concept of flying, with everything that is happening to the world in terms of climate change. I think it's possible for you to do a poem that is a conceit about both things that kind of interweave them. So my suggestion to you would be to really think about every kind of word or object that is related to flight, like wings, airplanes, landing gear, flight towers, airports. If you want to go with birds, then think about all of the components that make birds fly.
I did use the word turbulence, so would that be
that's another reference to flight, so turbulence.
Okay.
Right, so now focus only on using those concepts as metaphors for climate change.
Great, thank you.
You can even do like we as humans try to fly off and not deal with the problem kind of thing. You can add a lot of things with that.
Okay, I'll try.
Mauricio, you raise your hand.
We practiced actually something similar to this in a previous class a long time ago. And we basically took a concept like love or a competition or a fight. And we just started going off what is it compared to? Love is like a stopwatch. Love is like this. Love is like that. And at least get you, I guess, thinking in that same term of what are 2 things that are total that you would never think are like one or the other, just to kind of get you practicing. So if you're kind of stuck on it, I would recommend just kind of taking global warming and just kind of freestyle it, brainstorm what it could be like. and then try to look for like, I don't know, everyday objects like that you would never compare. Like, how is global warming like a tea kettle? Well, you know, the water in there is cool, but the longer that it stays on the stove, it's going to warm up and bubble over, you know?
Mhm.
So kind of things like that, you know? And,
That's right.
and I think that's like the beauty of it, because you find that a lot of things can be like global warming if you just kind of have a flexible mind, look through, you know, and kind of just are prepped for that wherever you go, so that you're kind of open to it, you know?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Mauricio. Yeah, definitely the beauty of this is finding those connections, because usually it's about two things that are so different, right? And the more connections you find, the reader is gonna be intrigued. Like, what's next? What is this connection he's talking about? I don't see it. And then you, as the writer, start explaining your view, right? So that's the love about this thing. Like, I really like it because of it.
Right.
Okay.
And again,
Thank you.
any questions of this exercise? Because we're still doing the exercise. No questions? I guess everybody's writing. Everybody's writing.
See, I see the
Pretty
shrugging
good to
emoji.
see
Where
now.
do I see it?
How much time do we have, Abraham?
8 more minutes, I think, or probably more. 10. I'll give you 10. And again, you just have to find the two things you want to compare, and then start thinking about a couple of connections you find on your head. It doesn't have to be completed like poetically or written nicely, 'cause that's what I did for mine. I just wanted to put them out there just to brainstorm, right? So once you get home, well, you're already probably home. This is the beauty of oh, sorry, Tina.
I was just gonna ask if you could just scroll down a little bit.
More? Let me know. Is that it?
For anyone that is having kind of a hard time thinking about objects, just pick one. If it helps, pick one concept or one of the components of climate change. Like I said, say choose coastal erosion, right? The flooding of the coast and the loss of, the coast. And from there, think of something else that could mimic that, and try to make a list of different items, different concepts, different actions that all revolve around that main concept. If you're thinking of like a puzzle, right? A puzzle is something that has multiple pieces, a lot of little jagged edges, a lot of cutouts. Our coastline is essentially a puzzle. So then start making a list of other things that belong within that realm of puzzles, that belong within the realm of games and that kind of thing. And that could maybe help you develop more imagery that you then use as part of your conceit. And then if any,
I like it. Everybody's thinking.
yeah, I can tell everyone's thinking.
I can hear the wheels.
And if you want to try to, workshop something, or, are feeling stuck, put what you have so far in the chat. And between me and Abraham, we can try to give you some extra little guidance or advice. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that, Kathy? A team of what? Or a group of people?
Hi, Louis. I'm
Mhm.
I'm really sorry that I have to do my one. I'm sorry for that.
Don't be sorry. I know you need to do your work.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're asking everyone to do some work right now.
So, what do you want me to do?
So right now the assignment is to think of two things that are similar, or that you can use to compare to the effects of climate change.
So, do you want me to read this?
Well, we're not reading right now, we're writing right now. So on a
Okay.
sheet of paper, make a list of things that are comparable to climate change.
Okay, so, do you want me to write it in the chat?
If you want to share it in the chat, you are welcome to do so. But make sure that you write this down on a piece of paper too, so that way you can use it to make your own poem next time.
Yeah.
Tina.
And the first part is about the Russian dolls.
well, this is my example. So I put like the Russian doll as my A, my the thing that I want to talk about, and B is global warming. So those are my examples, and you're coming up with yours, yeah. Because I wanted to like use the, Matryoshka dolls open and have little dolls inside. So I thought global warming has the same thing like in the article. They're talking about we have one problem with climate change, and then we discover that if we don't act, more problems are gonna pop in, but we don't know what they are until we open them, right? So I wanted to explore that as my A and B.
The cheese is going bad and the icebergs are melting. That is a great opening line. I think that'll work really well, Tina. Now just keep comparing icebergs and icebergs melting to cheese. The process of making it. The
We have to write more.
well, remember, a conceit is an entire poem that uses the same comparison throughout the entire thing. But that is a great start. And let me see, Kathy, a scrum team. I'm not familiar with a scrum team. Could you define that for me a little bit?
Rugby and technology.
Okay.
I'll go
I was trying
into
to look
it.
for it.
Louis, did you get in the chat?
Yeah, I'm trying to read it right now, Elena. Thank you for posting something.
Yeah.
So, Catherine, the next thing is trying to describe a couple examples. And again, they don't have to be too elaborate. I mean, just ideas on like what's the connection between a Scrum team and finding sustainable economic development.
Okay.
Dying coral reefs and vacant homes, I think, is a very good one. I think that one might actually maybe function a little bit more for like an extended. The faded photograph could still go within that, I'm sure, as like an object within the home, the vacant home. I see kind of where you're going with that, Mojde. Looks good.
Mauricio, a good tip is like, photographs, especially old ones, they have this thing called grainy, like it's kind of when you see the texture of the photo. So you maybe can consider that with like the grains of sand.
And Heidi, I see you have coral reef and kelp forest ecosystems. So that could be maybe your object A. So what would you be comparing that to in the context of, basically the destruction of them due to climate change? What is the other object that you would be comparing it to?
A bag of chips.
A bag of chips. And Heidi, I see coral reef and kelp forest ecosystems, and the kelp has become more expensive in the supermarket. I could see that, Mauricio. A little bit of gentrification in there. Looks good. Sterilization equals gentrification. I like that. Heidi, for yours, I think it's more important to understand that what we're doing is we're talking about metaphor. So we're not talking about a causality, right? Because a causality is, the damage that's happening to the coral reef and the kelp forests. That is causing higher prices of kelp in the supermarket. That's called a causality. What we're talking about is a metaphor, a conceit specifically. So, the damage to the coral reef and kelp forests, you could compare that to say like, I don't know, like the loss of seasonings or, you're now missing an ingredient to your favorite dish. Maybe better comparison could be, I don't know, the threads on a fabric, and how is, a damaged piece of fabric, the same as a damaged kelp forest, right? So that's going to be the challenge. Showing
I like the way you're talking
metaphor.
about this, the seasoning, Luis, because it's the different spices you need for a dish. I mean, the entire dish is basically an entire ecosystem.
Right.
The less spices you have or ingredients,
Mhm.
it's gonna mean the ecosystem is not good. It's like a soup without, I don't know what flavor or whatever. I don't cook.
But yeah,
But yeah,
that's
like
one way
that
to think
actually
about it,
works perfect. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, either one could work for sure. Or maybe a coral reef compared to the gastronomy of a town. Less variety, only food chains and unhealthy shit. Yeah, that's another way to think about it.
Well, this is the last minute, guys. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock.
It might as well show them the homework.
Sure. Since you guys love it. So, homework, reread the article on global warming and find your A and B
Do it, I just
different
finished
objects
reading.
and
Okay, just a moment,
or
Elena.
concepts to compare, to then use a conceit throughout and again throughout an entire poem or at least one stanza. If you want to change your
Can,
B,
can anybody see it?
subsequent stanzas, it is permitted. So again, you can have different B's like B and C or whatever, but as long as you have an entire stanza full of connections, right? And then en español, tarea. Vuelve a leer el artículo sobre el calentamiento global y encuentra su A y B, dos objetos y o conceptos distintos para comparar, para luego usar como una presunción durante todo el poema o al menos en una estrofa. Si desea cambiar su B en la siguiente estrofa, es permitido. Como les estaba diciendo en inglés, el chiste es de que a lo menos en una estancia entera tengan sus dos A y B. Y después si quieren pueden cambiar la otra cosa que están comparando. Pero traten de seguir comparando con las mismas cosas. Eso es lo importante, yo creo, de esta tarea. ¿Ok? So, any questions about your homework, guys? You already kind of started on it.
Just to reiterate that you basically already did start your homework. This exercise that we just did is to help you start this. So as you think about your homework, you don't have to necessarily reread the entire article, even though we did provide you with a link. You can start off with just the bullet points that are actually on the handout. So you don't have to do the entire article. But using your A and B concepts or objects that you chose, you can now begin to form your conceit. And again, a conceit is a metaphor that is used throughout an entire poem. So your poem could be kind of short, that's allowed, but we wanted you to really try to push yourselves and really use your metaphor consistently throughout the entirety of your poem, or at least a stanza. This recording will be up on YouTube in a couple of days, along with the handout on the Google Classroom. And I think that most of you got the concept. If you have any questions, don't feel like you can't ask them. You can always reach out to us using Google Classroom as a way to post your question in the stream, because it always helps for other people to get answers to your questions as well. And I did want to share with you the information for Nikolai's workshop. So I'm going to actually share my screen for a moment here. So here's your homework one more time. Make sure that you do your homework this week so that next week we are workshopping it. And here is the flyer for Nikolai's workshop. This is, again, part of our Community Bridges series. This particular series of workshops that we are leading are specifically focused on the civil rights era and how that era in our American history has impacted our community and culture today. Nikolai is going to be presenting What's Going On, which is going to be a workshop that specifically uses ekphrasis as a way to inspire some new poetry. It's going to be this upcoming Saturday, that's June 4th, from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. at Patria Coffee in Compton. It's located like about maybe, I don't know, it's actually pretty close to the Compton stop on the metro. So if you're taking the blue line, you can hop right off there at the Compton stop and you'll be relatively close to Patria Coffee. If you are hoping to attend, you can just show up, but it does help us to know in advance how many people are coming. So be sure to visit our Eventbrite page to register, which is distillarts.eventbrite.com. I'm going to just highlight this and paste it into the chat so that you can register now if you so choose. But you know, the real idea here is that we basically write about the civil rights era and how it's impacted our society today. We are collecting work for a book that is going to be called Community Bridges as well. You can learn more about that if you go to our website, but if you come to the workshop itself, you'll have a chance to actually submit your work there and then for the book. So that's that. And again, the same time in Montclair at the Barnes and Noble, David and Tina are also going to be hosting a reading of their work.
Thank
and a book
you.
signing.
You have the flyer.
Yeah. So there you go.
Louis, can I read too?
This is an event specifically for Tina and David, but if they are, open to doing an open mic, you might be able to read then. But that's for Saturday.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. And if you go to the workshop that's happening at Patria Coffee, that's in person. It's not going to be online. So just so you are aware, and for everyone else too, all of the past workshops that are part of the Community Bridges series, which we include Miss Michelle's and Natalie's, they are available to view on YouTube right now. So if you want to, just go to the DSTL Arts website, look for the Creative Impact series or page, and you can find links to the YouTube channel there. But for the most part, the idea is that we are collecting work that is focused on the civil rights era here in the United States and its impact on our society today. So if you have any poetry, short stories, even photography or other visual art, we are collecting work to be included in an anthology that features work by the community. So
when you say that particular era, it has to be at that time, or if it's something on the movement itself.
Yeah, something related to the movement, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so again, you're more than welcome to contribute now. You do not have to necessarily participate in the workshops. But if you want to be inspired by, some of the work that we've been examining, at least two of the workshops, the one by Miss Michelle and the one by Natalie, are now up, both of them on YouTube, so you can watch their presentations. And Nikolai's presentation is going to be up in a few days. So I'm working on editing that video as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. But that's it for now. Thank you, everyone. Again, if you have any kind of questions or anything like that, don't be afraid to use Google Classroom as the resource that it is. And for next week, we will be doing another workshop session. So you can bring in any of the work that you've done up to this point in Conchas y Café for us to give you feedback within the small groups, within the breakout sessions. So I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and I hope that we see some of you on Saturday, whether that be at Tina's event or at Patria Coffee in Compton, where both Abraham and I will be. So take care, everyone. Have a great night.
Okay. Congratulations, Miss Tina.
Thank you, Miss Lois.
Okay. Good night, everyone. God bless.
Bye-bye.